This afternoon, the search for answers after a Russian passenger jet crashes, killing 224 people. The federal government's plan to hike GST in exchange for tax cuts. Jarryd Hayne's NFL shock dumped by the 49ers. And heartbreak for the Wallabies as the All Blacks make rugby history.
This is 7 News at 5 with Angie Azimuth.
Good afternoon. Investigators are trying to work out what caused a Russian passenger plane to crash, killing all 224 people on board. The Airbus A321 had just taken off from the popular Egyptian holiday resort of Sharm el-Sheikh when it slammed into the Sinai Peninsula 23 minutes later. Authorities have been quick to dismiss claims it was shot down by Islamic State. They're hoping the flight's black box will provide vital clues.
In a barren desert, the mangled remains of a plane that was carrying 224 people. Their clothes scattered, their cell phones ringing in the debris. No one survived to answer. Many passengers were found still strapped to their seats. This was the Metrojet plane, an A321, 18 years old. It took off at 5:51 in the morning from the Egyptian tourist resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, bound for St. Petersburg, Russia. After just 23 minutes and at 31,000 feet, it dropped suddenly and slowed dramatically before disappearing from radar and crashing. Communication has been lost, he says, but Russian officials had no idea why. The airline quickly insisted human error was not to blame. Our pilot was very experienced, she says. Our aircraft was in full working order, so we don't know what caused the crash. At St. Petersburg Airport, terrible scenes as relatives learned that everyone on board was dead. I got a call it had crashed, he says, on my way to the airport. My son called us before he left, she says, with his wife and 10-month-old daughter. Ready to board, Yuri Shelna and his 3-year-old daughter Anastasia, photographed by her mom, Olga, all perished. Egyptian officials hinted early on they believed a technical failure caused the crash. The crew apparently complaining of engine trouble several times in the past week. The pilot in the final minutes reportedly requesting an emergency landing. The plane crashed in the Sinai Desert, where Islamists have fought an insurgency for years. Russian and Egyptian ministers dismissed claims that the plane had been shot down, saying militants lack the missiles to do it. Tonight, Russia is in shock and in mourning. A national tragedy and still a mystery this country will not forget.
A teenage boy has suffered serious burns to his back, chest and arms after catching on fire on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. The 14-year-old rushed to a nearby home screaming for help. Miley Hogan has the details.
At around 6:45 last night, neighbours here at Sunrise Beach heard loud bangs and screams coming from this park. At first, neighbours thought the screaming was children playing around on Halloween, but when they came outside to investigate, they realised it was much worse.
So I was up on the top of my veranda looking down, and then I seen a flame. And then I realised that it was a boy on fire, and then he's running.
There were a group of teenagers partying in the park and something obviously went really wrong.
The boy then ran whilst on fire to a house close by. A 17-year-old girl answered the door. She managed to put him out using a garden hose. She then rushed him inside into a cold shower and applied first aid. Paramedics say it was her quick thinking that saved his life.
They're in so much distress due to pain, and sometimes the first thing you can do is try and cool it down, and that's what the young lady did. She did a great job.
The boy has second-degree burns to his chest, arms and back. He was airlifted to Lady Salento Children's Hospital, where he's now recovering in the intensive care unit. Police are continuing their investigation.
We could all soon pay more for basics like petrol and healthcare, with the Turnbull government considering hiking the GST to 15%. It's one of a raft of major tax reforms the PM's likely to push as he looks to cash in on his government's newfound political popularity. Tim Lester has the details.
Angie, it has been a decade and a half since the Howard government introduced a 10% goods and services tax. Today, media reports suggest the government is examining Treasury modelling on a GST increase, up to 15%.
We're looking to get our tax structure right, which is why we're being very methodical in the discussions that we're having with the state and territory governments.
A GST of 15% means you pay more to go to see the doctor, you pay more when you do your shopping, you pay more on your education costs.
We do need to create a greater sense of urgency about some of the issues we face.
Influential Cabinet Secretary Arthur Sinodinos says if Mr Turnbull is to move on the GST increase, it needs to be done quickly so the case can be made before next year's election. The government also has wealthier families in its sights with yet more changes to its $3.5 billion childcare package. Until now, the childcare rebate has not been income tested, with parents able to claim up to 50% of their out-of-pocket expenses, capped at $7,500 per child each year. But there are reports that could drop once mums and dads earn a combined income above $230,000.
It's the wrong idea for confidence, for families trying to make ends meet.
21 months after the government launched their childcare review and 3 childcare ministers later, we are still yet to see any firm childcare policy from this government.
Tightening rebates for wealthier families should be a relatively easy sell, far easier, you'd think, Angie, than the mooted GST increase.
Indeed. Tim Lester reporting there. Hundreds of people have gathered in southwest Sydney for a conference hosted by radical Islamic group Hizb ut-Tahrir. It claims the Muslim community is being unfairly targeted and forced to assimilate. Alex Hart was there.
There was a very big turnout here today, almost 1,000 people packing this function centre in Bankstown in Sydney's southwest for the conference dubbed Innocent Until Proven Muslim. It was organised by the controversial Islamic group Hizb ut-Tahrir to highlight what it says is the unfair treatment of Muslims in the community, whether it be cracking down on prayers in a schoolyard, assaulting women wearing hijabs, preventing people from travelling overseas, or raiding the homes of Muslim families during terror investigations. The group was highly critical of the term radicalisation and of efforts to moderate the Islamic faith.
It is nothing more than an agenda of forced assimilation justified by exaggerated fears of a security threat.
The group's spokesperson said Australia was to blame for recent terror attacks on Australian soil, not Islam, because of its involvement in wars overseas.
With specific regard to Australia, it is participation in foreign battles that has brought the troubles home.
Not only did Hizb ut-Tahrir demand that Muslims in Australia be left alone, it also said that they shouldn't have to live by Australian values, and that included their children not being forced to sing the national anthem. Hizb ut-Tahrir has been banned in several countries, including Germany, but so far our government has resisted calls to ban the organisation here.
Alex Hart reporting. A life-saving leukemia drug that patients have had to pay $65,000 a year to get will now be available for just a few dollars after being added to the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. Jackie Quist reports from Melbourne.
Angie, this is a life-saving new cancer drug that has previously cost patients $65,000 a year and has been out of reach. Now, Iclusig has been added to the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, giving hundreds of cancer patients a second chance at life. Some sufferers of the blood cancer chronic myeloid leukemia don't respond to mainstream treatment, and Iclusig has given them a lifeline.
It's a very difficult scenario to put a patient in. Oh, you can live, but here's what it's going to cost you.
From today, Iclusig will cost cancer patients as little as a few dollars.
This is a really exciting development. It's been very frustrating up until now.
More than 3,000 Australians are living with chronic myeloid leukemia. Mum of 2, Tracy Pearce, trialled the drug and says it put her cancer into remission, enabling her to return to a healthy life.
I'm feeling so well. I'm just, couldn't be happier and more grateful.
20 years ago, around half of all patients diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia actually died. But now doctors say, thanks to drugs like these, their future is very bright. Angie.
Thanks, Jackie. Jarryd Hayne's NFL hopes have suffered a major setback after the former NRL star was dumped by the San Francisco 49ers. But he isn't giving up, telling fans on Twitter he'll be back at work chasing his American football dream. US correspondent Angela Cox has more.
Angie, his manager says that the news came as a shock and was disappointing for Jarryd Hayne. He was already in St Louis, ready to run on for tomorrow's game between the 49ers and the Rams. So he was quite surprised by the news just hours before the shock announcement. Jarryd posted this video online as he cheered on the Wallabies. Any disappointment, though, that he may have felt about Australia's World Cup defeat was no doubt quickly forgotten by this blow to his own sporting dream. The 49ers announced that he was being dumped for running back Kendall Gaskins. Now, on Twitter, Jarryd made it clear this isn't the end of his NFL dream. Blessed for another test. Thanks for the love. Wish my guys all the best against the Rams. If nothing happens, I'll be back on Tuesday. The former Parramatta Eels star's pre-season performance really blew away NFL commentators and 49ers fans.
Look at Jarryd Hayne running over people.
Critics say that in his 6 games with the 49ers, he just didn't live up to the hype. Supporters, though, say he just wasn't given enough time to adjust.
This is a development guy that's played only 6 games in the NFL. He's an Australian, and for him to be treated like this now is absolutely disgraceful.
So what happens now? Well, other teams in the NFL who've been looking at Jarryd Hayne and seeing his potential, now they can actually sign him, but they've only got less than 2 days to do that. If none come forward and want to sign him, then he could actually end up back at the 49ers on their practice squad. Now, that would clearly be a demotion, but the club says Jarryd could fight his way back onto the team before the end of the season, but he'll have to prove he deserves a spot. Angie.
Let's hope he can. Thanks, Angela. Well, it was an early and disappointing start to the day for Wallabies fans as our Rugby World Cup dream came to an end at the hands of the mighty All Blacks. The Kiwis overcame a second-half fight back from the Aussies to become the first country to win back-to-back World Cup titles.
A golden preparation for the Wallabies turned all black. This is the moment our intense rivals from across the ditch crushed Australian hearts.
New Zealand, World Cup champions in 2015.
There were scenes of jubilation as the All Blacks became the first team to win back-to-back titles and 3 World Cups. A historic moment marked with a royal congratulations as Prince Harry handed over the Webb Ellis Cup.
Prince Harry hands over the Webb Ellis Cup to the victorious captain, Richie McCaw of New Zealand.
Heartbreak for Australia.
Yeah, it's not about us tonight, it's all about New Zealand. They thoroughly deserve to win. Best team all tournament, so congratulations to them. They played really well.
I'm just so proud of being able to wear this jersey again today, and I don't think you ever have enough of it. And if you get moments like this, why would you ever call it a day?
Earlier, 80,000 passionate fans poured into England's Twickenham Stadium, along with a few familiar faces.
This is the best World Cup that we've ever seen.
Pride for their team was written on the faces of fans.
Well, Australia's got a lot of skill, and these guys got choke a lot.
The intimidation of New Zealand's haka seemed to work. The Kiwis controlled the game from the start. The Wallabies were struck down with an early casualty as Matt Hito failed the concussion test. Leading at half-time, the All Blacks were reduced to 14 men early in the second half, clearing the way for David Pocock to barge over.
The Wallabies and Pocock driving towards the line. He's over!
Then Tavita Kurandrani found space. It wasn't enough. Dan Carter's drop goal sealed the deal before Beauden Barrett struck the final blow.
New Zealand, World Cup champions in 2015.
Mate, it was a brilliant performance by the Wallabies. I'm really proud of them, but New Zealand were just a better team tonight.
I must say thank you, Australia. You're like a big sister. We love you. Hugs all around.
New Zealand, champions of the world. In London, Hugh Whitfeld, 7 News.
The 3 a.m. start didn't deter fans in Australia who packed into pubs across the country dreaming of World Cup glory. For Wallabies supporters, the excitement soon turned to despair as All Blacks fans celebrated their team's triumph.
It's just such a great feeling to win 2 in a row. I reckon it's a Dan Carter show. It was unbelievable.
We did the best we could, but at the end of the day, yeah, those All Blacks.
Yeah, it's a good day to be a Kiwi. And a little later in the Bulletin, we'll show the heartwarming video of Sonny Bill Williams and why it's winning him plenty of fans. After the break in 7 News, a gunman shot dead following a violent rampage. Plus, the first pictures of a mysterious ocean giant. And an Aussie rocker's close shave, all in the name of men's health. That's next.
Okay, I think I need
A Melbourne man has been charged with drink driving after crashing his fishing boat into a rock wall in Newport last night. The boat capsized after the crash, briefly trapping the 43-year-old driver and a passenger.
Managed to self-rescue themselves and walk back along the rock wall to the boat ramp where they've got back in their vehicle, and the alarm's been raised from there.
Police caught up with the driver at his home where he blew a positive breath test. He was charged with drink driving and other marine offences. Investigators in Romania could lay criminal charges over a deadly fire that ripped through a nightclub in Bucharest, killing 27 people. The blaze broke out after a band let off fireworks. 140 people were injured in a stampede for the exit, many suffering burns. Investigators believe soundproofing in the building was flammable and some exits were blocked off. 3 people have been killed by a gunman in the United States who went on a shooting rampage through the streets of Colorado Springs. Police surrounded the man and a gun battle erupted before he was shot dead by officers. Police haven't revealed a motive. Researchers have caught their first ever glimpse of one of the least known species in the world. The Amurus whale, the elusive giant, was filmed migrating off the coast of Madagascar. Until now, there has never been a confirmed sighting of the species in the wild. Scientists say the whale was pretty far from home. They're believed to spend most of their time near the Philippines and Thailand. A skydiver in Italy has had a hair-raising close call when part of his chute became tangled in his instructor's camera. It takes several attempts to free the line before the parachutist takes off his helmet and the chute finally opens. It was a momentous morning for INXS rocker Kurt Pengilly, who lost his iconic moustache live on Sunrise to mark the beginning of Movember. After a bit of hesitation, his surfer wife Lane Beachley did the honours.
Wow.
How do you know? I do a good job?
I've got a top lip.
While Kirk gave up his facial friend of 15 years, the Spirit of Tasmania cruise ship sported a new do below its nose. Men are encouraged to grow their own this Movember to support men's health. We'll have all the day's sporting news after the break, including the video that's won the hearts of rugby fans around the world, plus the annual Melbourne Cup blessing. The Wallabies have been left bruised and beaten, but not broken after their Rugby World Cup loss to the All Blacks. The 34-17 result sees New Zealand become the first nation to claim a back-to-back win and a third title. But despite the heartache, the Wallabies are looking towards the next World Cup.
I know that's a long time away, but I think when you look back on disappointment like this, you always use that as motivation.
148-cap veteran Richie McCaw refused to confirm his retirement post-match.
Do you now call it a day?
I still don't want it to end, to be honest.
Dan Carter's 19-point haul earned him man of the match in his final Test appearance. But it's this video taken after the All Blacks victory that's winning the hearts of rugby fans. A 14-year-old Kiwi supporter was tackled by security after running over to meet his hero, Sonny Bill Williams. Proving he is indeed a champion, Williams escorted the young fan back to the stands before handing him his World Cup medal. The gesture has won Williams plenty of praise online and given one young supporter a moment he'll never forget. To the A-League, and Sydney FC striker Matt Simon made a triumphant return to the Central Coast last night. The former Mariner scored a brace in the final 10 minutes to deliver a 3-1 win to the Sky Blues. Coach Graham Arnold said the unwanted 29-year-old had the match circled on his calendar.
What an impact off the bench!
When I brought him on, I just said to him, the scene is set. The scene is set for you. He said, don't worry, I'll go out and win it for you.
Brandon Barillo struck twice and Jamie McLaren added another as Brisbane thrashed struggling Adelaide United 3-0. Fame Game has firmed as favourite for Tuesday's Melbourne Cup after drawing barrier 12 for the race that stops the nation. You'll see the Melbourne Cup live and free here on 7. Racing royalty have gathered in prayer at the annual Melbourne Cup Mass. It's the first year the Cup's king, Bart Cummings, wasn't in the crowd, but he was fondly remembered.
Because he said he looked at the cabinet, he saw Melbourne Cups and Caulfield Cups, and he saw Cox plates and golden slippers. And in the middle of the ball was a statue of the Virgin Mary.
Bart's son Anthony and grandson James paid their respects, a brief pause before the race that stops the nation. The national weather forecast is after the break, plus how Melbourne thrill seekers were treated to a terrifying Halloween.